Welcome to Ancient World Studies. My name is Dr. Raoul McLaughlin. This is part 2 of a video lecture about ancient Chinese dragon coins. These coin ingots, produced by the Han Empire, display Greek letters. They're also designed to resemble the largest Greek coin issues, the silver double decadrachma. The question is, why did ancient China create Greek-style coinage? This video lecture considers the historical context of these coins. In the 4th century BC, the Macedonian king Alexander the Great extended Greek rule east as far as Sogdia on the frontiers of the Central Asian steppe and the Fergana Valley, which led into the Pamir Mountains. However, Alexander and his successors were not aware that beyond the vast Tarim Basin and the desolate Hersey corridor, large and prosperous kingdoms had developed in China. Likewise, the early Chinese were unaware that large urbanized states existed in the distant west. The Han Empire only became aware of Greek, Iranian, and Indian civilizations during the mid-2nd century BC. The ancient civilizations of the far west and distant east were separated by vast geographical barriers. In the center of Asia is the Tarim Basin, a 1,000-mile-long arid depression. It is situated between the Himalayas and the towering peaks of the Tan Shan, or Heavenly Mountains, covered in thick permafrost. The western part of the Tarim Basin is filled by a sandy desert known as the Taklamakan. Here, red grit particles heap into vast shifting dune fields. The eastern part of the depression opens into desiccated salt flats that poison many watercourses and kill essential crops. Beyond the Tarim Basin lies the arid Hersey corridor, a belt of minimal shrubland situated between the immense Tibetan plateau and the formidable Gobi Desert. But this was the strategic passageway that led 600 miles east to the edge of ancient China. The Chinese faced dangerous rivals in the far east, including a formidable steppe regime known as the Xiongnu Empire, occupying the grasslands lying north of the Great Wall. To placate these powerful rivals and prevent destructive raids on Chinese lands, the Han regime offered the Xiongnu large amounts of tribute, including food stocks and silk. Silk could only be produced in China, and therefore had international value as a unique trading product and a useful source of transportable wealth. During this period, the steppe was strategically important because Chinese territory was not well suited for breeding and raising horses. The Chinese military therefore relied on a steppe people called the Yushi to provide them with mounts for cavalry forces. The Yushi occupied the Hersey corridor and grazed their abundant livestock on the northern foothills of the Tanshan Mountains. To guarantee a continual supply of cavalry horses, the Chinese offered unique silk products to the Yushi in return for their livestock. However, in 174 BC, Xiongnu warriors seized the Hersey corridor, expelling the mounted Yushi nation, who had been long-term allies of the Chinese regime. The defeated Yushi fled westward along the northern foothills of the Tianshan Mountains towards the Aral Sea and the frontiers of Sogdia. This migration of several thousand miles took a generation to accomplish. The Yushi passed through strategic territories and fought against many other steppe populations as they made their way west. When the Han Emperor Wu came to power in 141 BC, he launched a major war against the Xiongnu Empire to permanently reduce their power on the eastern steppe. As part of his preparations, Wu dispatched a Chinese envoy named Chun Chan to find the former Chinese allies, the Yushi. Chun Chan was allocated over 100 followers, including advisors, armed guards, and foreign guides. He was to travel to whatever unknown lands the Yushi had fled to after the Xiongnu had driven them from the Han frontiers. Then he was to request their military aid in return for the opportunity to recover their former homelands. On the journey west, the Chinese party was intercepted by a Xiongnu warband, and Changchan was seized and held captive for a decade. Changchan eventually managed to escape from the enemy camp, along with a small group of Chinese followers. With limited supplies, they journeyed westward into distant, previously unknown regions. Changchan was unknowingly heading towards territories in Central Asia that were subject to Greek culture. This included the prosperous Greco-Bactrian kingdom, which dominated Afghanistan, and the main routes into northwest India. According to Strabo, there were at least 8 Greek-style cities established in Bactria and Sogdia by Alexander and his successors. These included at least 40,000 Greco-Macedonian settlers as a ruling elite in strategic urban centres. The most distant garrison in this settlement scheme was the walled city of Alexandria Escote, Alexandria the furthest, on the northern frontiers of Sogdia, guarding the western approaches to the Fergana Valley. When Changchan escaped from his Xiongnu captors, he headed into the Tanshan Mountains and passed through the western edge of the Tarim Basin. Crossing the Pamirs and descending through the Fergana Valley, Changchan was greeted by a people called the Da Yun, Great Ionians. These Yana, Ionians, were perhaps Hellenic descendants of Greco-Macedonian settlers or Iranians who had been subject to Asiatic Greeks. The Han Shu reports, "The people of this country, having heard of the wealth and productivity of China, had tried in vain to communicate with it, and when they saw Changchan, they asked joyfully, 'Where do you wish to go?' Changchan requested assistance to reach the new homelands of the Yushi nation. He was immediately escorted to a steppe territory on the upper Oxus River, where the Yushi had settled after their long migration. However, Changchan could not persuade the Yushi to re-establish their former alliance with the Chinese, or send their armies eastward. He therefore travelled south to investigate the prosperous and well-urbanized territory of Bactria, Daxia. When Changchan entered Bactria in 127 BC, he discovered that the Greek kingdom was in the process of disintegrating. 2 decades earlier, the Greco-Bactrians had been heavily defeated by the rival Parthian kingdom, which ruled northeast Iran. The depleted realm was therefore open to conquest by mounted warbands of Saka warriors who were invading from the neighbouring steppe. The Chinese called Greek civilization Lishan, since its presence in Western Asia originated from the conquests of Alexander of Macedon, Alexander, and his Greek successors. According to Chinese naming systems, Lishan was therefore a dynasty that gave its name to a people, just as Han China took the name of the founding Qin Empire and the succeeding Han dynasty. The urban population was still recognizably Greek, but there was no overall ruling authority to unite the cities and coordinate any further defense of the territory. The Hellenic cities of Bactria were still prosperous and well connected by commercial ties, but they could no longer field an effective military force. Silver tetradrachma coins from this era depict a bust of King Heliocles, the last Greek ruler of the region, in helmet and cuirass, with the obverse displaying an image of Zeus holding a thunderbolt and scepter. But the death of Heliocles left the realm without a regional monarch, and individual Greek cities appointed local magistrates as rulers as they prepared for their own defense. Changchan observed that Daxia, Bactria, has no great king, but only minor leaders ruling the various cities. But the region still had a recognized capital, described as a city, where all sorts of goods are bought and sold. Compared with the crossbow-equipped Chinese troops, these remnants of Greek civilization were judged to be weak in the use of weapons and afraid of battle, but the people are clever at commerce. Changchan estimated that Bactria had a population of about 1 million people, including Iranians and Asiatic Greeks. He was surprised to find Chinese commodities available for sale in these cities, and realized that Western peoples placed a high value on many commonplace Han products. He reported, "I saw bamboo canes from Cheng and cloth made in the province of Shu, southwest China. When I asked the people how they had acquired these articles, they replied, 'Our merchants go to buy them in the markets of Chengdu, India.'" Changchan returned to China in 124 BC with astonishing information about the existence of large urbanized realms in the West. He described territories including Bactria, Iran, and India, more than 3,000 miles from the Han frontiers. This was a revelation for the Chinese, who had assumed that their empire dominated the entire settled civilized world, and the distant West was a land of seemingly endless desert, mountains, and steppe. Changchan revealed that these civilizations prized Han products and possessed unique crops including alfalfa, which provided excellent fodder for cavalry. The West therefore offered important prospects for advancing Chinese civilization, with an opportunity for distant political alliances and the exploitation of significant new resources. Sima Chan explains, "Thus the emperor learned of Dayun, Daxia, Anxi, Fergana, Bactria, Parthia, and the other countries which were all great states, rich in unusual products, and engaging in settled agriculture like the Chinese. The emperor was informed that these states were militarily weak and prized Chinese products and wealth. In particular, the Chinese government sought to acquire Western horse breeds that possessed superior speed and stamina for cavalry warfare. Between 123 and 119 BC, the Han Empire conquered and garrisoned a series of oasis sites along the Hersey Corridor. Tens of thousands of Chinese settlers, including refugees from areas affected by famine, were relocated to the region to prepare the land for agriculture and populate the newly built fortified towns and cities. Trackways for supply wagons were established between these outposts, and the Great Wall was extended several hundred miles west to reach a new frontier garrison city named Dunhuang, Blazing Beacon. Within a decade, the Hersey Corridor was secure, and the Han Empire controlled a 600-mile conduit connecting China to the outer Tarim territories. Meanwhile, the Han government sent numerous envoy-led expeditions westward to establish political and economic contacts with Bactria and the intervening states. Some of these expeditions crossed the Central Asian steppe, but others located routes through the Tarim territories. Each diplomatic expedition included hundreds of military personnel who guarded gifts and political bribes worth millions in Chinese currency. Entering the Tarim Basin, Chinese envoys discovered that a series of small urbanized kingdoms had developed at the southern foothills of the Tianshan Mountains, where glacial streams of melted snow watered fertile field systems on the desert fringes. The Xiongnu had established their dominance over many of these oasis sites and demanded regular tribute from these crop-producing settled populations. Chinese officials therefore argued that securing Han authority over the Tarim states would be like cutting the right arm of the Xiongnu nation. But the Emperor Wu had ambitions to expand Chinese political interests further into the distant West. He believed that the former Greco-Iranian territories of Fergana, Sogdia, and Bactria might be made outer vassals of the Han Empire, with their unique and valuable commodities directly enriching the Chinese economy. The project seemed viable, since China's former allies, the Yuxi, were the most powerful military force in Transoxiana, and their armies were poised to conquer and occupy the main cities of Bactria. The emperor predicted that the Yuxi and Sogdians could be brought under Han political influence through the offer of material aid in the form of Chinese goods. The Han Shu reports, to the north of Daxia, the strong military possessions of the great Yushi and Kangyu might be made subservient to the interests of the Han by bribes, and thus won over by the mere force of persuasion. In this way, a territory 10,000 li, 3,000 miles, in extent, would be available for the spread among the 4 seas of superior Chinese civilization by communicating through many interpreters with nations holding widely different customs. The question is, how did the dragon coins fit within this scheme? Please see part 3 of this video lecture for a discussion of the coins themselves. For further information concerning contacts between ancient China and the Greco-Roman domains, please see my book, The Roman Empire and the Silk Routes, and forthcoming, The Roman Empire and the Oasis Kingdoms. Thank you.